Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Absent Evan, because I didn't go to this tournament, unfortunately.
Oh no,
Just too busy
oh no,
working.
sadness.
Otherwise, I would
But
have
yes, we're
won.
gonna,
I'll have argued.
maybe. Have you won one of our events
I
yet?
was scheming with the winner of this event. I was scheming with him about lists and builds, so
Okay,
I got an
we'll count
assist.
that. That's definitely an assist, but you've gotten very close, sir. But we have some stiff competition, that's for sure. Very talented players. But yes, as Evan is alluding to, we're going to cover quickly our latest RTT that we just had down here at SoCal. This is our first time for Old World Legends, where we went to Addie's Games, which is great. We had a pretty good turnout. I think 17, 18 players. Per usual, and we were our first time using the new updated FAQ, using our new Old World Errata 2.0, and
Yes.
also we used many of the match play rules that GW dropped as well. So this is, wow, this is a big shakeup, wasn't it?
Yeah, they kind of dropped just everything in the universe on us in the same time. Now, that's not a bad thing because I do think that a lot of
No.
these changes seem to have been made not in a vacuum, but instead in a world where all of these are going to be used at the same time. So match play missions, all of the FAQ changes, these were intended to be used together, and you could see a lot of those kind of things in the FAQ specifically, where they said, okay, we're going to give every infantry unit the ability to fight in two ranks, but we're going to take all the infantry units that already had a lot of attacks and we're going to like try to dial those back a bit. Like flails only work when you charge and stuff like that. So they kind
Mhm.
of took all the units that already did a lot of damage and just went, twisted those dials the other way. So you
Yeah.
kind of see a lot of stuff like that that seems to have not been made in individual vacuum-like choices, but instead are all in concert with each other, and that bodes well for the game. And you know what else it means? It means that the people who are writing the rules of this game, they're actually really aware of what the state of the game is and what the people are that
Oh yeah.
actually play it feel like, and that's really cool. I've never really been paying attention to a Warhammer game when it's like this, where they actually seem to know what they're doing.
No, they definitely do. And you could see versions of this. I feel it's kind of just GW's general policy is, again, they don't, and to be fair, sometimes it's just better their policy. I can't argue with it, to just not respond to the community all the time, to not
Mm-hmm.
always respond to the competitive players, and certainly on a weekly or even monthly basis. And so, but clearly they are watching, clearly they are aware. Whether they're watching the Old World Legends show or not, who knows? But they're certainly paying
Let's
attention
hope
to the
so.
community, paying attention to the people going to events, and very much appreciate that, because you could see a lot of the insight here. And you could see, again, with the addition change, it wasn't 0.1 more or zero point 0.2 more. This is went from like 0.2 to 0.5. There's a huge jump in addition here. Clearly, they were sitting on a lot of these iterations, and they were making a lot of iterations on the back end. And as Evan
Yeah,
alluded to, I think
right.
it's very clear they intended this to drop all at once, because it is such a big shakeup. It is such a big meta shift in a very positive way. And if you had piecemealed this out, it
Yeah.
would have felt very weird. But playing, this is the first time all of our players played a whole bunch of games competitively together, and it felt awesome.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I've heard some people suggest is there could be like a beta program where they release this FAQ or any kind of balance update to a limited list of people to proofread and play test and be like, you might have written this wrong or something, or maybe this is unclear, because there are some changes, like the changes to regeneration saves, that have kind of caused some people to lose their absolute minds. And so I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a different show, but this is a really good view into what this game is starting to turn into, and the different armies
Mm-hmm.
that are going to start having a chance at actually winning these tournaments, and the builds that they're going to use. And I think the subtext here is infantry actually
Oh
has a
yeah.
place to win, and the armies that rely on it, which in particular dwarves and beastmen, are kind of two in my mind that can't really get around using them, are going to start performing better.
Yeah, but we're definitely seeing the big meta shift, and we're going to go through the winning list here in just a second.
Yeah.
Infantry are back, baby, in a big way. As you can see, one of our winning lists was definitely very focused on infantry, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward. And then the next interesting wave, which we'll see how long that takes, is now that everyone starts bringing a lot more infantry, because they are a serious threat and contender on the battlefield, certainly with the mission rules and control. What are people going to start taking to do
To counter them.
anti-infantry things,
Exactly.
right, to counter them? So I think we're going to see a lot of evolving meta here in the next 6 9 months, which is very exciting. But without further ado, Evan, let's dive in.
So here's our first pace list. This is Greg. I was scheming with him before the event about exactly what kind of things he could try. He did play Beastmen the Wild Herd. Now, I believe the Wild Herd is actually going to be the most competitive army list for Beastmen because it has a bunch of upsides and very little downside. Really, like the only downside is one of your core units is impetuous and you can't take Minotaur units. Oh no.
And you have to paint a lot of models.
I mean, it depends on the way you play it because you can kind of figure out like a way to just bring a lot of shamans and a lot of chariots and stuff like that.
Maybe, but Greg certainly
Yeah.
had a winning list, and he certainly had a horde of beastmen on the table, which was so cool to see.
And to start it off with, we have a general who is a melee shaman. So he is a
Ooh.
great Bray shaman. Now, what really unlocks this, right, is that they can take chaos armor, full plate chaos armor, which gives them the ward save and the 4+ armor to start with. It also, this wild herd gives you more points to spend on your chaos mutations. So you could take both the 50-point slug skin, which normally uses up your entire slot of allotment of points, but additionally take gnarled hide. So now this Bray Shaman's on a 3+ armor save, and he and his unit are -1 to hit. Now, great Bray Shamans are actually weapon skill 5. So -1 hit with weapon skill 5 is actually pretty often going to be pretty hard for a lot of regular troops who might just be trying to poke him in the front ranks to actually hit him.
It's very good.
And even against the Lord, it's often like then they're going to be hitting you on a 4+ at most. And he does have a 3+ armor save, 5+ ward save. He did also buy Uncanny Senses, so he's higher initiative. And what else does he have here? He has the Black Maul. And the Black Maul gives you the D6 extra attacks at a heinous strength and AP. So that's awesome. And I know for a fact the other spell that he took with this wizard was he swapped his spell for Mantle of Gorok, which a lot of people have no idea what that is. Well, Beastmen, one of their spells is a range self spell that gives the shaman himself D6 extra strength and attacks. So this Bray Shaman starts with 2, casts a spell for D6 more attacks, and this Black Maul item also gives you D6 more attacks.
Yeah, pretty spicy. So suddenly we're seeing a combo here, a new combo we haven't seen before, where the wizard wants to get into combat with you, and you better think twice before just rushing into battle with him.
Yeah, so there is no combo with Spectral Doppelganger, but you don't necessarily need it because you just have an absolute mountain of attacks, which is
but he's also not by himself too, right?
Yeah.
He has his unit with him, so a lot of Beastmen rage coming at you.
Yes. So what else do we have? We have a ton of other shamans. There's 3 shamans here. Now, 3 of them are level 1s or 2s. I don't see the upgrades, but they are kind of expensive. So I imagine these are. No, I think these are actually just level 1s because you know what? You don't. Really
I think they're level 1s with magic items.
Yeah, so he's got magic items and upgrades. So for example, one of them has Pelt of Midnight, which is an upgrade that gives you -1 to hit from shooting attacks. So he kind of sticks that in the same unit. Horn of the First Beast is another thing, kind of helps with leadership and primal fury tests, so that's good. But a Bray Shaman, he's casting with +1 base, but the Dark Coven special rule that that this army has gives you +1 if you're within range of another shaman. So as long as you have shamans near each other within their command range, they can get +1, and it's once per turn per wizard. But guess what? They have 1 spell, so add means every time he casts it, he's just probably going to use that. So that's +2. Then he has a Herdstone, which gives you another +1 when you're nearby it. So he has a level 1 wizard casting with +3 on Viletide, which Viletide is only an 8+ to cast. So he was doing that. I did hear from him that wasn't necessarily as good as he hoped it would be, that even having 5 wizards that are all Viletiding, or actually 4 of them, because one of them has Mantle of Gorok, right? But 4 of them wasn't actually as much of a threat as it might have been before, because a lot of the units that used to be very susceptible to Viletide are the same kind of units that we're not seeing as much of anymore, because infantry doesn't care as much about losing 5 random dudes to Viletide, right?
Nope.
I have no idea what Scourge of the Burdened is. Wow, that's interesting. I need to look that up. But what we do have here is something that's really interesting. Chalice of the Dark Rain is an item that for that single turn, you turn off all enemy war machines and drop their missile weapon range in half. That's pretty wild. I think that's an interesting choice to take. It's kind of like a Falcon Horn, except it just kind of always works, and it's against shooting. And Beastmen do not want to get shot at. Like, if you have any of their monsters, any of their chariots, single cannonballs can just wreck hundreds of points of your army in a single turn. So I think that Chalice of the Dark Rain is nearly a must-take if you're trying to, go into anybody who's out there. And we have a second level 4. So we have 2 high-level wizards, right? And then we have 3 level 1s. And this one here has the Hag Tree Fetish and the Flying Carpet. So he's kind of like what I've been calling the Malagor build, where he's flying around and he has Hag Tree Fetish, and can just do extra damage with Viletide. However, what I would do instead, though, is I would take Primal Magic, because the Strangle Root spell that draws a line and then does D3 hits for each guy would be massively buffed by rerolling to wound with Hag Tree Fetish. So that's my only criticism here, is that I want it to be Primal Magic, but I think we're still seeing these builds, kind of follow up.
Yep, still early, very early.
Right.
Yep.
But that was 5 infantry heroes. What the heck else is in the army? Well, he's got 70-something gore. The Primal Warherd has 23 of them, and then 13 Ungor with spears. So that's a 36-man block with poison. They've got, Warband. They are impetuous, but again, this is a leadership test now, and you can't use Warband for it, so it's just leadership 8. But that's fine. I don't think that's that big of a deal, because remember, he's probably sticking the melee wizard in here, and that's the wizard who wants to get into combat and roll that D6 extra attack spell. And then he's got the 35 gore as a secondary unit, and this one has Totem of Rust, so that's the -1 armor banner. So this unit has additional hand weapons, so they don't have any armor, so they can just bubble, -1 armor save, and they don't have any, so who cares, right? That's very interesting. And then he was sticking several of the level 1s in the Ungor Herd unit and kind of flying them around the table with Steed of Shadows and stuff like that. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think with those big blocks that we're starting to see, that we will start to see more and more of them. Again, they hit like a truck, in particular in this combination, but they also have not a ton of defense. And again, but at the same time, who's taking trebuchets? Who's taking mortars right now? Right? People aren't taking things to deal with these blocks of infantry. I guarantee you, in the coming months, we're going to start seeing people starting to tech into and take things to deal with these very dangerous big blocks of infantry that aren't as good necessarily on defense. So we'll see how things evolve.
Yeah, remember that this gore block here, in combat, they have the 5-up armor save from parry, because they have hand weapons and shields, which is actually a viable build now, that you can get it almost doubling the save. But against shooting, it's just a 6+. So if you're firing pretty much any shooting attack against them, they have no save. So all you have to do is just have a decent amount of volume of attacks, whether it's a magic missile with a blast template, like Doom Bolt is actually pretty good now. It's a low casting value and has a small blast template. Or, like an Empire Mortar, which has a lot of REP. So what else do you have? You know what? He put 3 Tuskor Chariots in his army. You can put these in core. I don't know why he took them in special. I honestly don't really understand this at all. Because I like my build usually has like the Dragonors at this point, because it can only take 1 unit. But I kind of just like 1 big unit anyway. So I would love to find this out. I do think that the Chariots have a great play into enemies' infantry. So if there are enemy infantry builds, when you bring your block versus their block with a chariot in support, it's huge. So that is kind of an anti-infantry build. And if he has magic and combat res from his big blocks to handle any cavalry and monsters that come his way, then I guess the chariots are there to handle the infantry fights. That's my guess.
Yeah, really exciting. So again, our top place list, no dragons. In fact, not even a baseline that you would expect a hero. It is a hero based for melee, but a wizard based for melee. Very different builds, very different meta, and a lot of infantry kicking a lot of butt, which is really exciting. So congratulations, Greg. Awesome victory, sir. This is an exciting start to Warhammer, the Old World 1.5.
Yeah, just to point out, there's only 1 model in this army with Swift Stride, and it's the guy on the flying carpet. That's it. So very interesting.
Yeah, definitely come at me, bro. I'm going to take the battlefield. I'm going to claim my table quarters and objectives, and I'm going to let you come to me.
This army plays I know that he said it played the objectives very, very well, because you just have blocks that outnumber and score the objective and say, guess what? I just win now. And then you have the Herdstone, which you get to bring to the battle, and then that's another objective that you just pretty much just get to claim, unless if they massacre your whole army and get to it.
Cool. So who came in second place?
So Michael came in second place with his Wolves of the Sea list. So I haven't seen this before, because I didn't scheme on how to build it in the first place, right? But let's see, what do we got in here? So we do have a Chaos Lord, exactly 500 points. So he did take a Chaos Lord on Dragon with very, very minimal upgrades. Now, I think that's perfectly fine. The Chaos Lord is already going to be toughness 6 with 10 wounds if you do this.
Oh, yeah.
And Margaret Nurgle is like fine. That makes it pretty hard to hit when you're already high weapon skill. And guess what? You have Chaos Armor, so you already have the word save. So you still have 10 wounds. You're still toughness 6. You don't need an Ogre Blade and Enchanting Aura and all this other sugar and cake on top to be the absolute badass.
That's already really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already really good. And I think the interesting thing we're going to see in the coming months as the meta shifts, are we going to see more people still take that Lord level character with very few, if any, magic items because they want the raw stats of that Lord character? Or are we going to start seeing people take the mid tier hero characters who still hit pretty hard, but their raw stats aren't as good as the Lord, but it gives them more points to spend on magic? All right. So, the interesting thing going forward, right? Are we going to see more and more players who are going to stick with the Lord level character with the raw stats, but they don't get to take many, if any, magic items because they're going to hit that 500 point cap? Are we going to see people start going to the mid tier characters, those exalted hero level characters that don't have quite as good raw stats, but are still pretty good? They're still a hero character, but that it gives them more points that they can spend on magic items and upgrades before they hit that 500 point cap. So we don't know, right? We're going to see how that seems to shake out, but you still can't argue that a Chaos Lord, even just raw stats on a dragon, is still a force to be reckoned with, even without all those other additional upgrades.
Yeah, the main thing I think that you're missing is the regen. So you can't get the regen anymore. I was always a proponent that you did not need Enchanting Aura. In fact, they in the FAQ they said the Enchanting Aura can only go on infantry cavalry
Mhm,
characters or something, so it can't go on a monster anymore. But I never
mhm.
thought that that was an optimal place to put it anyway. I guess people can argue with me in the comments. I would love to discuss it, but this guy is still very very strong. He will
Yes, he
be an
is.
oppressive force on the battlefield. He doesn't need to have 900 points of items. But he also took
Yep.
Galrock, which that's actually kind of surprising because first of all, he's a very expensive wizard who's kind of unpredictable. And then the second thing is he has to run dark magic, which a lot of people used to not want to do. So that's interesting.
Hmm.
Obviously, it worked for him.
Yep. Well, it worked pretty well, but again, his scores certainly weren't as high as Greg's were, though, in
Yeah.
terms of the event. And we can look at the scores later. So he definitely did a great job and won his games, but they weren't crushing victories, right? So I don't know that Galrock necessarily performed. It might have just been, it's awesome, it's Galrock, it's a two-headed dragon, he could turn people into spawn. It's just cool to put him on the table.
So he just brought 3 blocks of 20 berserkers. I assume that they were not in skirmish because they wouldn't be able to fricking go anywhere. They were just blocks of berserkers.
I believe they were. Yeah, I believe I walked by his table. They were just bricks of berserkers. Those things hit hard.
So you've got flails, right? And they
Hmm.
have frenzy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the main difference between a Marauder Tribe Berserker and a Marauder with Mark of Corn is that they're also that the Berserker is toughness 4, I believe, and they're a little bit faster. They're movement 5, I think.
Yeah, they
So
have
that's
better
pretty much
stats.
it.
Yeah. Hmm. Yep.
Okay. I mean, it worked. I think that this is a kind of unit we might see a lot more of because this
I
is an
think we
infantry
will.
unit, sure. So it's got good combat res just from having some ranks and some banners and
Hmm.
such, but
Hmm.
also loves to fight other infantry units because it's just going to go absolutely
Does.
wail on them on the charge.
It's very cost effective too. Mhm.
Yeah, so they're 10 points each for that. Wow. Okay.
Well, remember they got light armor. He has throwing axes on one. He doesn't on the others, and he's got his full command as well. So
Very
yeah, they got to
exciting.
be in that 9, 10 point range. Yeah, they hit
Yeah,
hard.
I have a lot of experience playing against regular Marauders that I think are
These are
fine.
better.
They're cheap, but I guess this is just better. So interesting.
Hmm.
He also
Yep.
has 3 skin wolves. I think the skin wolves are
Hmm.
good. Now you don't see trying to pack characters in there and let them shapeshift.
Good.
You were not supposed to do that. Okay, that was what I like to call taking the piss, and you were not so you don't need to do that. These guys are already pretty cool by themselves.
They're very good.
And then he has a unit of Huskarls. I love that he has Huskarls. This is a very vibesy Marauder. Yeah, again, we do have 2 dragons in this list, but
Yeah.
again, the rest of the army is a very vibesy, like Marauder Cav focused thing. So that's very interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and I think the difference is, I mean, Michael's a great player, very talented, and did very, very well. And I think the biggest difference between before versus now is we definitely would have seen in previous events or tournaments, right? Someone bringing the 2 dragons, they would constantly, 18-2, 19-1, 20-0 their opponents.
Yes.
That did not happen this time. I think it was a combination of infantry being stronger. I think it was a
Yes.
combination of the new match play rules that we were doing in terms of more objective based scoring. I think it was new FAQ updates and like it was all of these things together. I do not believe it was a single thing, and he did very very well. But again, it wasn't those 2 dragons before it'd be you were just wiping out your opponent. We are not already event 1. We are not seeing that's the case anymore at all.
Yeah, I think that Greg had a bit higher scoring, mostly from the objective points that he was able to grab in
Hmm.
addition to doing damage. And I
He
think that
was.
maybe I can imagine Michael would have a decent shot at doing objectives against a lot of the teams that may have been there, but it's definitely a little bit less of a slaughter fest, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Very
Absolutely.
interesting to see these Huskarls. They do end up getting a little bit expensive if you buy all these upgrades, but I mean, you got drilled, you know. Oh, Marcus Lanesh. Okay, so they've got like strikes first on or I'm sorry, high initiative on these dudes too. I like that.
Yep.
Very
Yeah, I
interesting.
am curious to see what his next. I bet you he's going to update this list. I'm curious to see the next time he brings the Wolves of the Sea, what he does next time.
What does Mike? Do you know what Icon of Darkness does? That's the standard. Is it the
Not off
leadership?
the top of my head,
Yeah, bombing their leadership or making
I don't
them.
remember.
Yeah, interesting. So I would love to know more about this unit. This feels like a tech piece, like a little capture the flag type tech piece. So I want to know more about that.
Yeah, it is.
All right,
All
and
right,
then in
let's move
third
on to
place,
third place.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in third place, Andrew was able to. First time we're talking about the expeditionary force.
Hmm.
So, couple of things about the expeditionary force. I don't know whether we're going to see it because the ability to bring miners onto the table and ambush all over the place is very good for objectives. Now, the charge threat that these miners have is very, very minimal, and that's why it was just laughable to talk about it before. But if you don't have to charge and you just have to get to a physical location, you can just measure out. Okay, as long as I show up here, then I can just march and I'll get there, right? So then miners can do that plenty well. But what do we have? So we have Burlock, who is a very cost-effective little support character, and he's also a
He's
very
great,
cheap way to get leadership 10. So
and he has a great name.
yeah, Burlock Davidson, great.
Great name.
I do mix him up with Grim Burlockson from 8th edition, I think, quite a lot, but I will do
Also,
better.
also good name. Also good name. Yep.
So we have an engineer.
Hmm.
So he's the battle standard bearer, right? And he's got the expensive, 5-up ward banner and the combat res
Yep.
+1. So that's all great. That's fine. I think that's exactly what you want on your dwarf BSB the vast majority of the time. But he's also an engineer.
Hmm.
So, you have kind of the advantages of the engineer helping out your shooting units and the artillery.
Oh
Um,
yes.
the sapper, I think, is going to become a very good character because of how people are reading into the ability to have entrenchment now.
Yeah,
From
we'll see more of him. I bet.
and yeah, and he has this ability where like if you come near him, there's like take dangerous terrain test because he's set up a bunch of landmines, and I think that sounds awesome.
Awesome.
So
That's
very excited
just
to see
so
that on the
awesome.
table.
And for
Yeah.
78 points, it seems like a really good bargain. I think we're going to see him a lot more going forward.
Okay, then we have the gun Thane. He's got
Hmm.
the 4 runes you need to basically be able to actually machine gun people down. Like I've heard it described as being John Wick.
Because it's super cool.
Yeah, and in
Yep.
the age of everyone else having a much harder time casting magic missiles, this guy just shoots you with what's kind of
Yeah.
like a magic missile.
Yeah. Bullets, missiles, it's
Yeah,
all the same.
straight up, perfectly
Hmm.
fine. And then we've got a nice rune smith with some spell breaking for defense. I think that's great. I think this is a good balance of some good support characters, a really strong engineer, BSB guy, and then a kind of lone gun thane who, I mean, his main threat was getting Pillar of Fire to death because he was sitting by himself and just getting bounced through. So
Hmm.
these lone characters, infantry characters in particular, that want to hang out near a unit are massively buffed by the FAQ to vortexes
Hmm.
specifically.
Less vulnerable. Absolutely.
So we have 3 core units. So the Thunderers are the ones that the X Force can upgrade the most, with giving them like lots of like reroll ones to hit, and Burlock removing
Hmm.
like long range penalties and such. Basically, you stack all those bonuses together, and you have a lot of nice shots. Now,
Yes.
um, you can't fire like 10 ranks of guns at large targets anymore, but I don't think you probably are doing that most of the time.
No.
And this is a good little unit that's still dwarves, so they still have heavy armor and shields and great weapons, so
Hmm.
they can still kind of
Hmm.
fight in melee and be pretty durable if they want to be. If they parry, they have a 3+ armor save, right? And so
Yeah.
you can just shoot until you get into combat, then you just try not to ever get moved off of the objective you're sitting on.
Yep, Thunderers definitely have more play significantly than they did before, but I think the biggest unit that's had the biggest glow up with all the updates in terms of benefiting from multiple vectors is really those Rangers. And I know from talking to Andrew, they really shined during his games. And talking to other Dwarf players, they're seeing they are so excited about their Rangers with these updates to infantry. I think we're going to see a lot more Rangers hit the tabletop in the coming months.
Yeah, 2 ranks of great weapons, very exciting. You've got a lot of nice shooting and nice board presence. They have weapon skill and ballistic skill force. They're kind of a very versatile unit. I'm a huge fan of kind of these hybrid type units.
But they also have shields too, right? So
Yeah.
they get to choose. Do I want to use my great weapon and shield for that extra armor, or do I want to switch to my great weapon? And you can choose each round now. Exciting. It creates interesting
Yeah.
choices and it
Yeah,
makes them more
absolutely.
competitive. That's the best combo in my mind.
Yeah, being able to just pick which weapon you're using at any combat is great because you don't have to do the thing of, oh, I really want to not die this turn, but then I'm going to be stuck using my hand weapon and shield for the rest of the game, kind of like situation, right? And it's so
Yeah,
annoying to feel that. And instead, you can just, I feel like, yeah, the being able to pick the weapon you use has buffed dwarves the most because a ton of dwarves can have heavy armor and shield, which is the
yeah,
best parry combo to do, right? And also great weapon, which is also the best, pretty much the best weapon you can get as a backup, right?
offense.
Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Because in most infantry units in the game, it's typically if you upgrade them, you don't have the other weapons or you don't have the shield. But a
yes,
lot of the dwarf units allow you to have both. Again, there are definitely other units, Black Orcs and such, and or other Motley Crew units where you can have multiple combos. But example, like if you look at like Graveguard, right? Well, you either get the hand weapon and shield, or you get the great weapon, but you lose your shield. So you have to pick and choose. You can't have both. So
I'm so glad you mentioned Motley Crue because I have a lot to I have a bone to pick with you
that's a
about that.
different video about Motley Crew. We're not doing that in this one, sir.
Oh boy, hey, Slayer's a Motley Crue, so
They do, but
a
he
lot
didn't
of people
have
have been
any.
discussing whether or not you could try to use Motley Crue to actually make Slayers like anywhere near viable, which is an interesting topic to bring up, which is great.
All right, gyrocopter, always good to have.
Yeah, and you get the scout, get to hey, if he plays against Michael, right, stick that scout gyrocopter in his face and make those frenzied, marauder blocks just run right towards him. That's what I would do.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Then we have bolt throwers. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some bolt throwers here. Now, skewering is probably one of the best runes on them. I think the bolt thrower is a little bit expensive as a base price anyway, so you might as well just pay for that upgrade to make them actually hit hard if they do roll the hit. The annoying
Mm-hmm.
every single time you're hit on a 5+ thing is, that's annoying. But
Yep.
yeah, and bolt thrower, also very very fun for like. I just really like the idea of these kind of non gunpowdery type artillery just being very mechanical and fun.
Yep.
It's a big miss that the Slayer axe thrower thing is kind of just terrible. It's so cool.
For now, that is an opportunity for them to improve it in the future, sir.
Absolutely. All right, so we also have grudge throwers. So we have runes
Love
of
it.
reloading. I feel like you often want to take those because you just really don't want to misfire. You don't want to have your thing turn off for 2 turns. It's just feels good to not have that problem. I know dwarf
Yep.
players constantly complain that their artillery is the worst in the game. These are one of the things that you get that helps make up for it. These runes of reloading and stuff like that, because Empire players
It's
they're just
great.
luck. It's all just we're just at the casino, right? All right, and we have one cannon. Okay, so there's a cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And Runa Forging, yeah. I mean, mostly he just doesn't want to misfire. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. Makes sense. And then a whole
Oh, and
bunch of
he's got a
miners.
massive block of miners here.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's only one block, I was actually imagining multiple blocks, but because we've got one block with a steam drill, that makes this easier to ambush.
Gotta take the steam drill for sure.
Right. So easier to ambush, and he's going to stick down those miner tokens or whatever they're called all over the place, so
Mm-hmm.
he can just bring this unit on, nearby like 3 or so different miner tokens, and they can just
I saw
like,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of people are going to be very confused about what to do about it. Now, normally, hey, a 9-inch charge threat after they show up, that's not that much, but guess what? I mean, all they have to do is sit there and be like, cool, we're on your Herdstone, for example. We're on the Herdstone now. What are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do?
Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah, it's a really fun list. It's a very balanced list. It's there's melee units, there's range units, there's war machine units, there's a mix of characters. I think it's a really fun list. It's really thematic. It's fun using that arcane journal, and he did very well with it too.
Great, absolutely great. I honestly, I know we didn't see it here, but I do think that people out there who are like, we never see any regular dwarf warriors. Like, it's so sad. Like, they're supposed to be, the rank and file. I think you can take dwarf warriors more now than ever. They're so cheap,
Hmm.
great armor save. You don't need to do any damage. Just freaking sit there. Ask my state troops how that goes. That's pretty much what their job is. They don't do any damage. They just sit there. And dwarf warriors could do it even better. So just do that.
Yep, yes they can. All right, cool. So we made it to the end. So again, really exciting start. Congratulations to our winners, to Greg, to Michael, and to Andrew. Well done, gentlemen. We're excited for our next event, which actually will be our next 2-day GT coming up in Palm Springs Open very soon. So the end of July. Again, we'll be still moving forward with the new FAQ, the match play rules, the errata, and we're really looking forward to see which army is going to come on top in the 2-day event. That will be our first event where Cathay will be at the event too. We'll see if anybody's going to show up with that. I'm excited. That's a heck of a lot to model and paint in time for the GT, but I wouldn't be surprised if at least one person somehow pulled it off.
Yeah, or we're gonna see some gray plastic.
Well, that it's also too. But as long as people are showing up and having fun, that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for this one. Evan, any last words, sir?
Stay legendary.
All right, we'll see you next time.